I wanted to start with Manchester United. Obviously, the personal terms are going to be no problem with Bryan and Mbeumo and Manchester United. What's the latest, as far as you're aware, in relation to conversations between the club and an official bid going in?
Yeah, I actually wouldn't say at this point we can refer to personal terms as being agreed. The point is more that Mbeumo wants Manchester United, and that will make it easier to discuss terms with him if it gets that far. I think when I broke the interest and then the fact that it was advancing, and importantly, that it's not specifically linked to Bruno Fernandes, and at that point, of course, his own future was up in the air. There was a lot of excitement, but there are formal steps here. One is the fact that a wage will still need to be agreed. So we're not there with personal terms yet, but the player prefers Manchester United. And as I broke, he's not like Cunha, one to say European or Champions League football is important next season, which is obviously lucky because Manchester United don't have that. And therefore, he's sold on the pitch, which is coming from Ruben Amorim. And I think Manchester United fans, when they hear that, are maybe more inclined to wonder what this project or long-term pitch is. But really, it's quite simple from Amorim. He's telling players he wants offensive output from those behind the striker. He wants two that can play either as 10s or advanced 8s, still Bruno there and Mason Mount. And because of that competition in the centre, he wants players that can filter out into wide areas. So Cunha can go central or left, and Mbeumo can go central or right. And that means that each player feels they're going to get game time and is not going to be coming into a squad swelling in size. And in the case of Cunha, he was sold very quickly. Now with this one, the club-to-club talks are starting. And Manchester United believe a deal may be possible for somewhere in the region of 50 up to 55 million, and that will include the add-ons. Brentford are a bit more bullish at the moment because Manchester United have just done a bit of business for Cunha for 62.5. So given there's been no formal bid at the time we're live, you can understand why Brentford are saying he hasn't just got a 1-year contract, he's got 2 years left, because they can trigger the option for the extra 12 months. And that's when you start saying value's protected and pointing to the 62.5 million that Cunha went for. But Manchester United feel like because the player's decided he wants to move to Manchester United, they will still be able to do this a little bit cheaper. So there's a bit of grandstanding going on at the moment. Call it 62.5 million on the Brentford side because they're pointing to the Cunha fee. Call it 50 million plus on the Manchester United side because that was their industry intel heading into talks even before they did Cunha. Do they meet in the middle? Very possibly. But I think Manchester United, when they get round to making an opening bid, and there will be one soon for sure, that starting number will be lower than the figure that they triggered for Cunha. And then the last point on it is that Brentford are going to be quite flexible, I'm told, with payment terms. There's no release clause. So Manchester United will no doubt be hoping to do something similar to what they eventually were able to do with Cunha, which forced them to trigger the release clause and pay that number in 3 installments. But if you think back a few weeks earlier, Cunha and Manchester United, ideally, from United's point of view, was supposed to be 4 or 5 installments. Then they agreed the 5-year deal with the 1-year option. They went to Wolves and very quickly learned that Wolves were not going to entertain that. So they said, can we pay in 5? Can we pay in 4? No and no. Okay, we'll pay in 3. And that's why rival fans made a very amusing joke that it wasn't Matheus Cunha, it was Matheus Klarna instead. And I think there might be a Klarna element to this Mbeumo deal as well, where Manchester United might go a little bit higher than that 50 million in order to get close to the valuation of Brentford, but they will want those preferable payment terms. So there is optimism that this one can get over the line.
Yeah, it feels like it will, if that makes sense. Nothing, say, 100% guarantee, but typically, and I honestly put this in the category of people like yourself, Ben. I was talking on the United stand last night, and so when I see the likes of Ben Jacobs, I did actually drop the Jacobs cracker line, to be honest with you. in front of 250,000 people, so that might pick up more pace. But I said, when the likes of yourself, David Ornstein, Fabrizio, and multiple other highly credible journalists sort of all report very similar stories, my general view is that 99 times out of 100, those deals end up completing. I understand that yourselves, as the journalist, won't quite say that. As a fan looking at it, I feel like it's very, I agree with you. I think there'll be a meeting in the middle. If we pay a little bit more, we'll probably get better terms. If we pay a little bit less, the terms will probably suit Brentford a bit more. But it feels like it will happen. I think United fans are happy and excited about that. Cunha and Mbeumo, let's just put them aside as the kind of in really good places. What else for Manchester United? What's next? Bruno is not going to leave, as we know. A number 9 is hot on the agenda. There's talk of more fullbacks, a goalkeeper. What are you hearing will be the next step in Man United's summer transfer activities?
Yeah, I think with Bruno Fernandes, the Al Hilal negotiations were advanced. He backed up when he spoke yesterday, reporting from a few weeks ago by myself that one, he'd had direct conversations with the Hilal president, Fahad bin Nafel, and two, that Manchester United would have sold if Bruno Fernandes said he wanted to leave. In this instance, he deliberated with his family. The logistics of the deal were close, but it was not just a football decision. And Bruno Fernandes is not going to go to Saudi Arabia. We can't discount a European suitor coming in for him, but Manchester United believe their captain will stay, and they obviously don't want to lose him. And nobody other than Saudi Arabia is going to offer the kind of money that would arguably make it worth Manchester United's while. So next steps for Manchester United, and I'm not saying it has to be do one thing outgoing in order to bring in an incoming, because it's a long window. And we must remember too, a really crucial point, that Cunha doesn't have a visa. His contract, once it's all formalized, will be July the 1st. So the first installment of the 62.5 million, 20.8 million will be July the 1st. And that's significant because it means it's actually going to be put on 25-26 financial year. And that also gives Manchester United a little bit more flexibility. So outgoings are going to be important. Marcus Rashford, asking price 40 million. Barcelona want the player. Rashford wants Barcelona. But let's wait and see, because I don't think Manchester United can or will want any kind of flexibility there. If you go back to the Antony deal, they decided in the end, okay, loan was better, but they're back where they started now. And either bettors have got to buy the player or Manchester United have got to sanction another loan. And that doesn't help them in the short term imminently on the financial books. If you look at Jadon Sancho, wanted to find a permanent solution, ended up being a loan, back at Manchester United again. So if they've learned any lessons, it will be to stick to what I think for a player like Rashford is a reasonable asking price. Maybe someone comes in 5-7 million less. We see whether Manchester United entertain that. But I think there'll be a permanent exit for Rashford. Alejandro Garnacho feels the most important one because it's pure profit on the books, especially now there will be no Saudi Bruno Fernandes money. And still, Chelsea are deliberating, but they've got Jamie Gittins and Nico Williams on their list. You've got Napoli, but they've also got Georgi Sudakov, another option. But I sense, because Sudakov likes to play through the centre, that if, as expected, Kevin De Bruyne joins Napoli, they'll want a proper touchline hugging winger. And that's what Garnacho wants ultimately, is not to be used in the central position where he's been deployed under Ruben Amorim. So maybe the move to Napoli will suit him. Challenge there is that in January, Napoli bid 50 million euros. Manchester United wants 70 million euros. So at this point, there's a goal from valuation. But I think the big priority will be Garnacho. And then Manchester United searching for this number 9. That may have an impact on either Rasmus Højlund, more likely, or Joshua Zirkzee. Højlund, I'm told, is the one that if they can bring in the right kind of striker, they would be open to an exit. But you have this horrible financial conundrum of lots of interest in Højlund, particularly from Italy, but you don't want to make a book loss. So that might be one where they have to consider a loan with an option or an obligation, because if they just sell now, it doesn't reflect positively in the books. But you've got a culmination of options to maybe bring in over 100 million, and then you have a bit more flexibility in the market. And then, as I said before, number 9, one option. We can maybe come back to that in a moment. Still may bring in another fullback as well. Purvis Estupiñán at Brighton is a name that I've been hearing, which caught me by surprise a bit because they are quite well stocked on that left-hand side, but maybe there's some reticence about the long-term fitness of Luke Shaw. And then I think Manchester United is still debating the goalkeeper situation. They might be alert to the Emi Martinez situation, but he is well contracted at Aston Villa. And along with Manchester United, you've got Atletico Madrid who are interested. Joan Garcia, who I've mentioned before, has agreed terms with Barcelona. I expect that one to happen because there's no real club-to-club negotiation needed. A 25 million euros release clause means that Barcelona are confident now of formalising that one and getting it over the line. But with goalkeepers, I said before, and I'll just repeat it in case people did the criminal act of missing old shows that we've done. When you are thinking about all of these transfers for Manchester United, you have to, one, be collective, not just take a name and say, is Mbeumo valuable at 50? But then what have you got left to strengthen in all of these other areas? Because Ruben Amorim wants 4 or 5 players to come through the door. And then second of all, on the goalkeeper specifically, what's slowing them down a little bit is 6 months ago, it was all about a number 2, a young keeper that could challenge Onana, but not necessarily replace him next season. And that's because Bryan expected to leave. Now it's changed a bit and there's internal debate with no clarity yet about Bryan and Onana. So then they may have to pivot and go for a number 1. And if they move, for example, for Emi Martinez, there's still a fee there. Aston Villa could be asking for 30 odd million. If Mike Maignan goes to Chelsea and hypothetically Milan's asking price was met at 25 million, then Aston Villa are going to be using that as a yardstick because Maignan is nearly 30. He's only got a year left of his contract. If anyone pays that 25 million, Emi Martinez is probably going to go for more, and Manchester United may feel that that's too expensive as well. So it's a fascinating period of the window because you've got the opening, which is the culmination of hard work over months, and that's why there's a flurry of business. But then you've got this mini closing, and for most, it shouldn't be that significant, the June the 10th deadline. But because some teams like Chelsea and Man City are so active because they are trying to do business for the Club World Cup, if you're up against those clubs in a race for a player, then you kind of have to escalate your business with urgency. So weirdly, clubs are telling me, we felt quite calm because we've had 6 months to line up everything. But now suddenly other clubs are moving with a bit more urgency because they want them by a certain day to go off the Club World Cup. So now we feel it's both the beginning of the window and kind of a mini end of the window all
straight
wrapped
away.
into one. And that, I think, is why it's so busy at the moment. And it's also why I think even if they're dating these contracts July the 1st, Manchester United are making a play at moving now, resolving situations now, because they know that there's 1 or 2 targets out there that if they don't move now, other clubs might be in a rush, have the urgency, pay a little bit more because they want that same player for the Club World Cup. And then if you just kick back and wait for the financial year to end, you may potentially miss out on that target.
Which, as you say, makes a lot of sense. And I think I've actually quite enjoyed I think the transfer window having, as you say, this kind of it's a window within a window. It's sort of I always say the transfer window to me is like Vatican City within Rome, if that makes sense, like a city within a city. But now what we've got is like it's almost turning into one of those Russian doll toys. It's like a city within a city within a city. It's a mini window within the transfer window. And as you say, it's kind of shaking things up. Teams that are at the World Club Cup really want to win it. They want that prize money. They want the accolade of being the inaugural winners, especially if. And I don't think we know as fans how we're going to feel about it until it's played, if I'm being honest with you. I think a lot of people with the new Champions League format weren't up for it at the beginning of the season. And we love the Champions League this year. And if this summer's World Club Cup is a resounding success, if you want the first winner of it, that's historic. So a lot of teams seemingly looking to put their places, their sort of ducks in a row. But it means other teams have to move faster because you might lose out on a target. And for some players, the opportunity to say, oh, hang on, Chelsea want me. And they want me now to go to the Club World Cup. it's a massive thing for football players. So yeah, as you say, we're certainly seeing things move forward. I wanted to